Hey everyone, Brandon Lee here, host of the podcast Escaping Rock Bottom, available on Google Play and Spotify and iTunes. Thanks for being with us. So I met Sandi actually at a 12-step recovery meeting in the Palisades recently. He was a secretary of that 12-step meeting and started to get to know you a little bit better, and I'm glad you agreed to do the podcast. You have 12 years of recovery.
Coming up on 12 in October.
Coming up on 12. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm coming up on nearly a decade, so kind of similar in that time frame of recovery. Sandi, take me back to where it all began for you. Where were you born and raised?
Sure. I was born in London, England. My family were immigrants. I immigrated from India to England and lived there for about a year and then moved to Los Angeles. Father was getting his PhD here at UCLA. Lived here until I was about 7, and then we moved to Connecticut.
Okay, whereabouts in Connecticut?
In Storrs, Connecticut.
Okay, I used to work in West Hartford, Connecticut.
Oh, no way.
At the NBC station
20
there.
minutes east of that. So it's where UConn is.
Okay.
The town of Storrs.
Yeah, Storrs. Yeah, UConn. Women's
Yep.
basketball beasts.
For me, it was partying.
Yeah.
I flocked to partying.
Connecticut is also a party school.
It is.
UConn.
The colder the weather, the more they drink.
Yeah,
That's
because
just
you got
my
that like
experience.
cabin fever, especially in the winter months of New England.
Yeah.
All right. So when did you first dip into was booze your thing? Was drugs your thing? Take me back to that first experience.
It initially started with alcohol. I was 13 years old, just boys being boys. We literally had my first drink at the railroad tracks in Connecticut, abandoned railroad tracks. Went out there, we grabbed some 40-ounce beers, saw it in a rap video, and we just thought we got to replicate this moment.
Did you put it in a paper bag?
We attempted to. Sadly, the package stores are called out there. Didn't have bags to fit 40-ounce beers.
So you're just drinking 40s out of a bottle.
Drinking 40s out of a bottle. I took a few swigs. It got very foamy. I threw it up, but then I drank it again, and I refused to give up on finishing this 40-ounce beer.
So you finished it.
I finished it. I got drunk. I got drunk. We met some girls. I made out with some girls. It was a good day for a 13-year-old boy in Connecticut.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad.
No.
So how did it escalate? When was because I got into hardcore drugs at about age 15. I kind of got introduced to cocaine at a young age. What about you?
Great question. I was prescribed Ritalin as a kid for my quote-unquote ADD, attention deficit disorder, which everyone can probably say they've got a version of it or two. It was in high school that we started sniffing our Ritalin. We started snorting it, started crushing it up. So we would drink. On the weekends, we called ourselves weekend warriors. So Monday through Friday, we were good schoolboys. I went to an all-boys prep school for part of my high school career.
So did I.
Yeah. So we fit this mold Monday through Friday. Friday evening through Sunday, we just got smashed. And snorted Ritalin, drank, and that continued until I went to college. And the weekend warrior starting on Thursday. And I started drinking. And, a lot of my friends would say, hey, you know what? When you're drinking, you get really alive. And I took that as a compliment.
Right.
Where I'm not sure today I look at the silver lining. Maybe that wasn't, because I have enough energy as it is. Like I'm sober right now talking to you.
Right.
And I've got energy. And then slowly I was introduced to cocaine in college. And I was off to the races. It's like, if you're in Oklahoma and you want to get to California, you can take Route 66. It'll get you there. It's a little slow. Or you can take a flight. For me, cocaine was that flight. It was a direct flight out here. And I just was off to the races running with cocaine. And pretty soon the cocaine was, every time I drank, I did cocaine. Every time I did cocaine, I didn't necessarily drink. And
I can definitely relate to that. And, going even back to the private school atmosphere, my parents sent me to private school because they thought that, it was good athletics, good academics. But what a lot of people don't realize, at least at the Catholic school I belonged to, there was so much drug use, so much alcoholism, so much binge drinking and partying. It was almost like we were wound up so tight during the week with the uniforms and
absolutely
this class and this class and this class and this school, that on the weekends, you were talking about the weekend warrior, we all just let loose. And so I think a lot of parents were stunned when they found out that, wait, you guys were using hardcore drugs and, you weren't in parochial school, and it does exist.
Yeah. My parents, their reaction was, we sent you to private school to straighten up and to stay straight, not to
and party and get out of control. Yeah. So how long did that like go on for? Because I didn't get sober until I was about 28, on the verge of turning 29. So it was like a big chunk of my time there in the 20s of the drinking and doing the cocaine and the hardcore drugs.
Yeah, it was 2007, October. I was 28 and a half, kind of like yourself.
Yeah.
You know, it was interesting. I had so many interventions done on me. I had so many therapists. I had family that was pleading with me.
So they knew you were struggling.
Yeah, they did.
You didn't hide it from them.
No, you know, there became a point in time where I just wore it as a badge. I said, you know what? I do cocaine, I drink, I party, I lose control, I stay up for days on end. My life started to really narrow down professionally. I started losing jobs, and you know, it was interesting that at 22 or 23, when you lose a job, I figured a trick out. I would go to the competitor that same day and say, hey, I work down the street at so-and-so firm. I'm thinking about leaving them, so this interview has to stay confidential, but you know, and I clean up very well, and they'd offer me a position. I'd say, great, I'll start tomorrow and I'll go quit my job right now. And they had no idea I just got fired an hour ago. And I played that game until you run out of firms.
Right.
And it was 2007, and you know, the jig was up, the girlfriend knew, the parents yet again pleaded with me. And it was a conversation with my boss at that time, and she pulled me aside. You know, the stock market started to correct, and real estate was starting to crash, and I was in real estate, and she pulled me aside and said, Sandy, you have a real drug problem. You got a real problem with this cocaine thing, and work's not going to be good for a few years. I strongly recommend you go get help. And you got a few bucks, go get yourself clean and give yourself a shot at this. And she had a conversation that was so different than anybody else, because she shared with me some of her growing up in the 80s and partying and losing friends. She shared an experiential story with me versus the pontificating story, which my parents did and counselors.
And I'd say that, and it's so fascinating that you bring that up, because when I was about 28 years old and I had just gotten out of the hospital, and they sent me to like the mental health ward, and this guy,
all been there.
Right, and this guy I was talking to, just kind of telling him some of the stuff that led me to that coma, you know, what led me into the coma at LA Presbyterian Hospital. And he asked me this question. He goes, why are you so angry?
Yeah.
And I was like, what do you mean, why am I so angry? I'm like the nicest guy in the world. I ask any of my friends, they'll know I'll do it. And I just went on this diatribe, and he goes, why are you so angry? And he was starting to make me angry because he kept asking it. And then he finally goes, don't answer that. He goes, anybody who loves themselves would not be doing the things that you're doing to yourself. Yeah. And this man had cut into me. You want to know why?
Why's
he
that?
had 15 years sober. I did not know it. It took another sober person who had gone through and walked the path that I had walked to cut right through my stuff. And it's interesting because it almost seems like that woman was that person for you.
She was. She planted that seed. And what I did with that seed, I took it to my psychiatrist and said, hey, you know, he had recommended AA meetings, he recommended rehab, outpatient. And I finally said, how does one get sober? And he slid me a phone number. And the phone number was a guy named Bob in New York. And Bob, I called him. And Bob said, meet me at a meeting on Wednesday night. And Wednesday night came, I had every intention to go, and I got high instead. And I sent him a text, and I said, hey, Bob, work thing came up. He goes, no problem. Friday, sure enough, another work thing came up. He knew the dance. He called me and he said, hey, Sandy, I got another guy named Miguel I want you to meet. And I reached out to Miguel, and Miguel said, hey, can I buy you a coffee? No harm in a coffee. It's not a meeting. And that coffee was at the a French coffee shop on 6th Avenue in Chelsea. And I won't forget that day. It was a Sunday. And this guy, Miguel, came up, and he sat down, bought me a coffee, and he told me his story. And that was a connection. And I left, it may have been half an hour, 2 hours, I don't know. I left that coffee, and I called the rehab, and I said, I'm coming there. And that following Monday, I shipped off to LA. And I heard Miguel's story, and Miguel was checking in with me every day. He wasn't saying, get sober, are you sober, let's go to a meeting. He said, how you doing, bud? He actually cared.
Yeah.
And he would give me a couple nuggets from it. He said, oh, I remember when I used to do that. And I don't have to do that anymore. And so it was a series of events that led to me, and I came out to LA for rehab. And I signed up for what I thought was a 30-day program, which, You know, a lot of us, we think 30 days you can fix, 28 years of
which, by the way, that whole 30 days of stuff,
Yeah.
that's so set by the insurance companies,
Totally.
not what is really needed to have that shift.
Yeah. I was in rehab for 9 months. Rehab, sober living, level 2,
Right.
level 3 care. And I walked out of there at 9 months not feeling like I needed to drink and use, having a new solution. And I stayed in LA. I actually went back to New York briefly to try my old life back. By 10 a.m., I was trying to order cocaine at my office. And that same boss, I said, I don't think I can do this. She goes, I don't think you can either. Go back to LA. And that's when I boomeranged right back here. And I went back to the rehab and said, hey, I'm going to listen to you guys. Because you guys told me when I left at day 30 that I probably need more treatment. And they said, great. And they got me into sober living and just helped me to integrate back into society. And that was the biggest thing for me. And even at 9 months, I continued to do 7 meetings a week. And I continued to listen. And I got a sponsor. And I joined the herd.
Yeah.
As they say. I joined the herd. And I was told, stay in the middle of the herd. Stay in the middle of the herd.
What were those? So, we talk a lot about in recovery, there's it doesn't take long for the miracles to stop happening, right? When we quit drugging and we quit drinking and we quit those vices,
Sure.
The miracles start to show up. And we have this saying, right, a pink cloud.
Yeah.
For me, that first year of recovery was dark.
Yeah.
I was battling a lot of inner demons.
Mm-hmm.
So I never really experienced that pink cloud until a little bit after my first years when I finally started to see some of those pink cloud moments.
Sure.
What was the beginning of recovery like for you?
It was, honestly, I had the pink cloud experience out of the gate. Things started to open up. Things started to shift. And I was looking for that white light experience, which didn't exist for me. But the pink cloud for me was there's so many people willing to help me and to make me feel safe. And there's an old saying that Clancy from the Pacific Group says, he says, an alcoholic, you have to treat them special for them to feel average. And a lot of guys in AA treated me very special just so I could feel average. And that first 9 months, I heard also a saying that if you're on the pink cloud, you never have to get off so long as you continue to do the work to stay in that pink cloud. And through my recovery, I found oftentimes, like with therapy right now, like where I am today, I've been going to therapy every Monday. And I told my therapist last week, hey, my life's pretty calm. Let's go every other week. And I told my sponsor that. And my sponsor said,
why would you stop taking the medicine that's making you so happy?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So my response was, okay, therapy, let's get back into Mondays.
I love that you say that too, because, I think a lot of people who don't have experience in 12-step rooms, and, I equate it and I explain that same thing with depression, is that, when somebody's depressed and they're on a regimen with their doctor and they start to take a medication and they start to feel great and life is starting to work for them.
Yeah.
And the moment that life starts to begin to work with them, what's the first thing that they do? They want to get off the medicine.
Absolutely.
And we tell ourselves, okay, well, why when you're feeling good would you stop whatever helped you feel good?
Yeah.
And I say the same thing about the 12-step meetings that I go to and just recovery in general and therapy as well. And I love that because therapy is amazing for me. I love therapy. I look forward to it and have a great relationship with my therapist. And it's the same thing that there are now times where I walk into my therapy appointment. She's like, what's going on? I'm like, life's great. And we shoot the shit for an hour, you know, but I know that it's there when stuff gets bad and that I always have that appointment kept because life happens.
Yeah.
And that's why I love the connectivity of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. Just being able to run my ideas by somebody else and having it filter through that is very important for me.
And just like we go to our meetings, even when life is good, we don't just go to a meeting when life's bad, because if we go when life is good, we always know it's there when life is bad.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I still maintain 4 meetings a week. I still maintain a relationship with my sponsees. I sponsor 4 guys. I talk to my sponsor twice a week on the phone, and I see him about 3 times a week at meetings. I like to say I'm in the middle of the herd. In the morning, I make 3 to 4 calls to fellow sober members, and in the evening on my drive home, I make 3 to 4 calls to fellow sober members. I remember those calls used to be to my parents, which set me into more of an anxiety and panic.
Yeah.
So I stopped doing that, and now I call them a couple times a week. I'd rather have a couple good conversations with them a week versus 7 pulling teeth conversations with them a week.
Let me ask you this. What is the relationship like? I was a really good addict in that I hid it from my parents. They actually did not know I had a drug problem until I was 9 months clean, making an amends to them for stuff they had no idea of what I was even up to. You're a little bit different. Your family knew of your drugging and drinking and knew that it had caused chaos in your life. What was it like to rebuild that relationship with your parents in recovery?
Sure. My parents are very forgiving people. And I made the amends to them within the first 9 months. And my father cut me off and said, you don't need to tell us everything. We know. We just want you to be a good kid from here on out. So it's the living amends.
Yeah.
And my mother was the same experience with that, with my mother. And I've strived for being the best son to my family. And, my relationship initially with my family, they were still in the first year, they were like, are you drinking? I was at a family gathering. My dad says, don't drink any hard liquor. And I said, well, I don't drink, period. I'm in 12-step recovery. And he says, well, just drink beer. And he didn't really understand it. But today they understand it. They understand I don't do anything no matter what.
Right.
Drugs, alcohol, no matter what. One beer for me, it might seem okay that first day, but within, I play that tape. So it's very important for me. What's prevented relapse for me is I play that tape out when I'm in front of it. And I've been in front of alcohol, drugs a couple of times in 11 years.
Me too.
Plus years. And I play that tape. And that tape takes me to a very lonely, isolated, dark world really quickly. I'm not going to be able to hang on that long. And, I'm 40 years old. The gifts of the program have given me a life way beyond my wildest dreams.
Yeah, first off, I was telling him, and many of my most of my followers know that I'm a huge, that I do art on the side.
Yeah.
Art was a way for me to get out of my own head at the beginning of recovery,
Absolutely.
which is now blown up into a whole second business. And you have the most insane artwork at his house in the most beautiful place in Santa Monica.
Thank you.
And these are some of the gifts. I mean, these are the gifts, not some of these gifts. These are the gifts that you've been able to experience in recovery that I was talking to this guy on the phone the other day, and he's struggling, and he reached out to me because obviously I'm now very public about my recovery and my sobriety because I want people to see, listen, I fell pretty far down the scale, but look at my life today. Yeah. And so that's now attracting people who are struggling, who have never been to a 12-step meeting. And, one of the things I say to people, I'm like, no, this is the reason why I'm so open about it is because I know how beautiful my life is today. Yeah. Right. And I want others to experience it because I think, at least I did. I'm like, God, if I get sober, my life's going to be boring and it's not going to be great, because I've equated greatness with the partying and the drugs and the drinking. But this life is amazing that you've been able to create for yourself, that you would not have any of this if you were still drinking.
I like to think that I traded my nightlife in for a day life.
Yeah.
I wake up early. I'm up at 5, 6 on the weekends. That's me sleeping in. It's kind of hard dating when you wake up at 6 a.m. Most people, that's not normal, not normal behavior. But, I love being outdoors. I've got a wonderful dog. We run 20 plus miles a week. I get to hike. I get to play tennis. I get to golf. I get to have a very active life. I get to have the life that I used to portray to others that I wanted, but I never had. And it's a reality for me today.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about you're going on 12 years.
Yep.
Okay, and tell me a little bit about, have you ever had any struggles within the 12 years?
I've had a lot of struggles. Look, the financial struggles, especially early in recovery. Am I ever going to make money? I got a job at 6 months sober. For 3 years, I showed up to an office not knowing if I was going to make any commissions in real estate. It was really challenging. I had to leave that job. I actually entered another 12-step program in regards to the work. There's an old saying, if you're not working 36 steps, you're shortchanging yourself. Wow. So I've worked multiple programs. And through the work of that program, I left that job I had. And I don't want to call it a career because it was a job. And I found a career. And that career's blossomed into me opening my own company and having, and I shared with you earlier, I've got, a quarter of my sales floor is sober. it's an amazing thing.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
I love that so much because it's one of the reasons why I wrote the book that I wrote is because I experience, and I want to get into that with you because I think it's a great example. Just from my experience of being in 12-step recovery meetings, like there are some of the smartest alcoholics out there.
Hardest working,
driven,
motivated.
I mean, everything. Yeah. And I tell people, I'm like, the stigma of addiction is real and it does exist. Yeah. And I experienced it less than a year ago where I was offered a main anchor job here in, in Los Angeles. And unfortunately, they found out that I was writing a book about addiction and recovery and wanted to get on the motivational speaking circuit. That offer was rescinded because they were fearful, right? Because they had their fears of their own, preconceived notions of what they assume an addict is, right? A troubled lot, somebody who is, you must be troubled if that was even part of your past. And I love the fact that you run your own company and that you do hire addicts. Tell me what some of the beneficial aspects that you've experienced by having, recovered addicts work for you.
Sure. It's lended to a greater communication and connection with the people who are in recovery in our company. I'd like to think that, recovery's allowed me to be vulnerable with others. It's allowed me to share intimacy, which is into me I see, with others, not only at the sober level, but even my non-sober employees. We have a thing at the office. We're vulnerable with each other. I share with them, here's what our path is. Here's our plan. Here's our goals. Here's some of our motivation. And I think they respect that. And retention is pretty strong at the company. And having sober, look, we've had employees relapse. We've had to fire sober employees. It gets tough. But at the end of the day, we don't quit on anybody who doesn't quit on themselves. That's the mentality we have. We're the second, third, fourth, fifth chance because I got that chance.
Right.
Somebody hired me and gave me the opportunity, and I pay it forward all the time.
And I think that there's something beautiful with being able to, you say, vulnerability is huge. And I think so many people are afraid, right? If I'm afraid to be vulnerable because then I may be called out or may be seen as weakness to some. Yeah. And I'm sure there are some bosses out there who look at vulnerability and they immediately think of weakness, right?
Absolutely.
Where we see strength.
Absolutely.
And it's one thing to, to be able to be empathetic rather than just sympathetic because we've been through it, right? We've been through the ringer. And I think what's beautiful is that your non-sober employees see a boss that is empathetic. Because listen, normies have their own struggles too. They may be going through a divorce or they may have their own issues or problems. That it's really cool to have a boss that can be like, what, I understand struggle.
I've had a lot of normie employees come up to me and saying, I have an uncle, a brother, some family member who's affected by alcohol. Pretty much every one of we actually had an employee last week, one of our admins, her father passed away from this disease last week. And my immediate response was, I am so sorry. I can just imagine the pain you're going through. Take the time off you need, and we're here for you.
Right.
And she was able to ask me a lot of questions about my recovery and wondering why her dad didn't get that. And some of us are teachers and some of us are examples.
I know.
That's just how it works.
We like to say, right, some people get the message and some people are
the message.
The message.
Yeah.
So
I'd like to think just continuing to carry the message. And I love how you talk about helping others. At a social media level, every year when I take another sober birthday anniversary, I post it on my Facebook, my Instagram. I can't tell you the amount of love and support that comes from it. And I got to tell you, every year I get 2 to 3 people who ask me, hey, I had 2 fraternity brothers in the last 5 years say, I need help.
Yes.
Which is surprising. I should have had 30 fraternity brothers say that. But 2 came out of the fear.
Right. And that's the beautiful thing. And that's one of the reasons why I'm on this huge push, right, to end the stigma. And because I see in the rooms and I meet people like you and I meet so many people who are, to me, the greatest success stories of when we put ourselves first and we decide to make that change. And I do the same thing, and I celebrate my recovery now, and I feel comfortable now celebrating it publicly. And just like you, I will never change my phone number from when I was 17 years old. I have the same phone number because, believe it or not, a month ago, I looked down at my phone and I saw a phone number coming in from somebody I used to hang out with 15 years ago. I knew exactly what that call was about. It wasn't to say, hey, what have you been up to the last 15 years? And what was it?
Sure.
He's an alcoholic and he's struggling and he needs help. And he's like, I've just seen that you're sober and like you have this amazing life. Like, how did you do it?
Sure.
And it's for that reason, because if I would have been hidden about it and never shared it with anybody else,
Sure.
I would have never helped him
Yeah.
get to his first meeting. He's got 30 days now. You know, like that's what I want my recovery to be about, is I want people to see it. I want people to see it and see that there is success in recovery.
I 100% agree with that. Yeah. And that's been a huge part of mine, not only work, social media level, but just in general. You know, it's happened to me plenty of times in the past 11 years. You could be at a grocery store and they hand you back an extra $1 or an extra $10. And you're the guy, and I'm emotionally sober. I got to give the money back.
I have to.
I
feel like scum and just gross if I knew that and walked away.
And the teller will say to me, like, why are you returning this money? And I say, I work a 12-step program.
Yeah.
And I have to return it to you. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Like, I have to. And I walk away from that. And I've had people ask me, like, what does that look like? Restaurant, you know, you go to a restaurant, I'll sit at a table, like, I don't drink. They'll keep asking me, do you want to drink? Do you want to drink? And on like the third try, I actually say to them, listen, if I order a drink, I'm going to order some cocaine. Yeah. So if you're okay with that, go ahead and get me that drink. And I've had waiters say to me, like, I'm in sobriety too, or I used to be sober, or what does that look like? You know, we take that away from that, and we show our willpower, like, look, I'm not going to drink no matter what.
Yeah.
One day at a time.
Yeah.
And that's just how it works.
And do you see, as we begin to close here, one thing I get from, it's interesting, you know, the majority of the people in my life, they're all like normies now. Yeah. And so 99% of my friends who are in my life today have never seen me drink or drug.
Sure.
So they look at me now and they're like, Brandon, like, you're the most in control person I have ever met. Yeah. You are like the most disciplined person. I take that as the greatest compliment of a 12, you know, being in sobriety. And they asked me, they're like, dude, why can't you just have a drink? Like, you're so in control. And I just tell them, like, if you enjoy this person, you definitely don't want me to drink. And so I tell people, and then they have a follow-up question, are you going to be like this the rest of your life? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to choose to be like this the rest of my life so that you people will want to be friends with me.
Yeah.
You know?
The life I have is a direct result of me being sober.
Yeah. So it's a lifelong thing for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the journey. I love, you know, you asked about, like, have I had struggles? This year, the struggle, and honestly, this year has been the hardest year of my sobriety. I went through a divorce, and I don't wish that upon anyone. I can't tell you how many times in the rooms over the last 11 years I've heard about people go through struggles and go through divorce and et cetera. And it's been those little nuggets have held in my head, and I'm able to lean into the room and reach out to guys who've been through this. And that fear of being alone, that feel of that, any of that fear has gone away. I've replaced that with higher power. And I wish my ex-wife nothing but the greatest, like, miracles in the world. Right. And I'm at that point. That's a healthy way of thinking. And the old Sandi wasn't like that. Right. But I get to have that today, and I don't get to walk around with no resentments. Or if there is a resentment, I get to address it at once. Yeah. And I turn that resentment into praying for others, praying for her to get what she's looking for. Thy will be done. And that's been the greatest shift for me this year. I'm truly at a place of just peace and calm. Yeah. And you know,
even when chaos is surrounding you.
Exactly. And I've been through some chaos this year. And grateful I've come out of the other end. I truly feel like it's behind me. Yeah. Come out the other end even, whole. And just that verbiage of even, what does that mean? Just being at zero, I'm not underwater anymore. I'm not looking to fly. I'm just right at even level. And there's nothing wrong with that.
I absolutely love it, man. Yeah. You're awesome. Yeah, it's been amazing getting to know you since I've been back here in Los Angeles and hitting these 12-step recovery meetings. Listen, if you're listening to this podcast today and you're struggling right now, on my website, escapingrockbottom.com, I put a list of resources out there that you can go and look into and ask people for help. That's how we got sober. We asked for help, and people, you know, they put out their hand and they help both of us along the way. And there's people out there who will help you. They'll share their story and they'll be there for you. So thanks for logging on to this edition of Escaping Rock Bottom. We'll see you back here next week.
Thank you.